You're such an asshole.
All right, continuing on. Housing expert. See, I'm a housing expert now. See, I want to be like the 40 and 50 something life coaches that just declare themselves expert as they write for a no-name website blog owned by Condé Nast. Oh yeah, I'm a gorilla expert. What? How many experts you want? I was just all right. So we do have a kind of an interesting question because I know a lot of you younger folk would like to own a home, but the millennials and let's be also honest, the Republicans via Donald Trump voted going all the way back to Barack Obama to increase the money supply, I think tenfold. And then you're all wondering, why is everything so expensive? We need more government money because your teachers failed to teach you basic economics. But now that interest rates are going up and housing prices are at least not going up as much, slightly going down a little bit, some of you are starting to get a little bit of hope. And the question the client has posed is very well thought out, actually, but overly thought out to the point that you missed the forest from the trees of why should you buy a house and if you should buy a house. So I'm going to give you a much simpler analysis on like, okay, here's how you figure out whether you should buy a house or not, rather than you. And there's nothing, by the way, nothing wrong reading Robert Kiyosaki. Nothing. I recommend Jason Hartman. If you guys want to learn about real estate, there's no foremostest. There's no better authority, legit, no better authority on housing than Jason Hartman. All right. So if you want to get into the bits and the bites of that, go follow him. But for general stuff, we're gonna take his analysis and we're gonna throw it all out the window. I'm gonna tell you how to do it. Capping, working out the best time to get my own place. Couldn't stay at home. The Songshell family, you said, don't waste currency on rent unless you're top G. Chad 10%er, but families white trash. Best to stay away from petty criminals who don't have anything in their names. Right, then separate yourself from your family. There, that has nothing to do with housing. I ended up with a broken bone in my hand for one of them over the New Year period. Out of blue assault me, wasn't expecting it from family. Went the hard way. All right, look, dude, leave your family. Be ashamed if you bought this house, built it up, and then your typical scumbag parasitic family, you think you're better than us? You owe me. And they think they're entitled to your stuff. Living in a shared house and got stable job in the city I live. It's better than the other draconian Marxist states in here in Australia. Hang on, I'm having one of those weak spells. It's like where it switches over from whatever carbs to fat burning. Ugh. I have long-term engineering role. Make that anonymous. No, it's too late. You said it after. Please make this anonymous. Then you list the thing you want anonymous. Don't say, oh, by the way, retroactively fly back in your time machine and make it anonymous. Too bad. Building things. So there's long-term work prospects here. My reconnaissance is more or less done. I intend to stay here for the foreseeable futures. The other states are worse. I'm a minimalist. Got 3 months living expenses saved up. All my expenses are 50% of my income after tax. Good. So you have room to buy a house if you like. We don't need to know about your specific details. You have an old car. You have student loan debt. Because your millennials also voted for your version of Barack Hussein Obama and Donald Trump. But we pay no interest here in socialist Australia. The government just gets a percentage of my income till it's paid back. So they literally enslaved you. They literally enslaved you. Under the guise of care and compassion, the repayment program was to be made to literally enslave you. Admittedly part-time, but they you I know taxes that is you owe the government a certain part of your labor, but you should go to pay for something. But now they just garnish your wage. Remember when Western civilization and the Anzacs? What's the former British, like Canada, Britain, Australia, the white countries, for lack of a better. Remember when we used to generally make good decisions? Nah, those are the bad times when we just kicked a lot of ass. We got so bored with ourselves, we started fighting wars with each other because, like, let's fight with the Germans. Government gets a percentage. 3% of my earnings. Don't read these numbers out loud. You are hedged against inflation, let's just say. Don't plan on selling. Consulted with a mortgage broker. Most I could borrow is $328,000 with a $10K deposit. Besides apartments and rental retirement homes, you can't buy much anywhere near work, which is on the outskirts of town anyway. I don't want to live with white trash bogans. Diggly wiggly doodlies. Stealing stuff from my front lawn, nor a 1-hour commute. Question: how much more over the normal cost of rent would you consider the payment of a mortgage for it to be okay? Here's where your hyper analysis comes in for a house. Dave Ramsey says 20% down to spend less than 25% of pay on mortgage. What percentage of income do you think is reasonable to spend on a mortgage? Question 2. Example: I could borrow $328,000 now based on the savings and a job, and monthly repayments of $1,626. Of that, 53% goes to the principal, and the rest goes to interest. As you worked in banking, what percentage of a repayment should a minimalist aim to pay? I'm not answering these questions. If I had to go and research and sit this down, you would have been looking at a $2,000 answer. Question 3. As we can't lock in long-term fixed loan rates for 30 years like you can in the United States, do I accept that having changing interest rates over a 30-year period is typically done every 2 to 5 years? So should I be aiming for the longest fixed rate that I can even get that is a few percentage point above the variable loan? I would get the longest percentage just so you know the known variable. That one I will answer yes. Because if you're going to be there, you estimate at till the end of the decade. So that's 7 years away. See if you can get a 5-year. If you get a 7-year, do it. Just so there's no surprises. I mean, unless the bump is like doubling your payment. But if it's within reason, like 1%, maybe 1.5%, get the longer term interest rate. Because minimalists tend to be risk averse. Question 4. Do I just suck up paying rents until there's a large financial crisis? The prices go off a cliff by all conceivable metric. Houses are overvalued compared to 2006, as noted by people like Dear Cappy, George Gammon, etc. Well, you could, but I don't know when it's going to crash or if it's going to crash. I haven't analyzed the Australian housing market. Like here in the United States, the last time we had a housing crisis, there was such an overbuild of inventory that housing went down by about half, especially in some places, more like 40%. I don't know what it's like in Australia. The other thing I have a concern about is Australia printing off more money. It is, well, and that provides at least a floor or some upward pressure on housing. So I don't know. Well, let's take a look. I mean, is housing going down a little bit? Let's take a look. Australian housing prices. Let's take a look at the map. Bloomberg. Well, Bloomberg set to plunge 15%. Jardin says, I don't know who Jardin is. I'm gonna say I don't trust Jardin. Tumbling housing prices, rising interest rates weigh on housing market. Housing prices. Oh, it looks like housing prices are going down in Australia. Okay. So far, it's tumbled 9%. So you're in the right time. You're in the right time to be looking at this. Yeah, if they're off 9%, that's not bad. But don't ask me how to time a market. I don't know how. If I knew how to time a market, I wouldn't be here. I'd be the world's richest man, not telling you guys how I time the market. And I'd be buying all the tiggle-bitted red-headed hears to staff my luxury yachts and mansions. Question 6, would you sit down and wait for market corrections if you were in my I don't know. Don't ask me to predict the future, and never ask anyone to predict the future again. If you're my age, what would you give if on the area in a country market you want to live? I want a video response. So here's it's a billion questions. 5 of the 6 I don't think can actually be answered because you want to know what's going to happen in the future. So that's the wrong way to analyze it. So I said, I says to the guys, what do average houses go for in your area? What is the average monthly rent? Don't do this for fortnight BS. Convert to American. How many years do you plan on being in the place? And he says to me, average house price here is $453,000. Average rent for a house is $1,392 a month. I pay $444 a month rent for a room. You plan to be there for a long while. Okay. you can afford a $220,000 house. Mortgage on that would be $1,136. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. And this is the lesson for every young person to take. Should I rent or should I buy? The general rule is that if you're single, mobile, you should always rent because renting tends to be long-term cheaper. But if you happen to be in this guy's situation where you know you're going to be there for a long time, 7 years is generally the rule. You got a good, stable job, bobbity boo. Kids are not, don't worry about it. Then maybe housing is worthwhile. But I'm going to say this again. Housing is more of a personal decision than it's an investment decision. It's both, just like you need a brain and a heart for your body to live. You need both. But if you're going to put weigh one thing on the other, it's a personal decision. Specifically, where are you in life? Are you going to be there for a while? Right? And if you're going to be there for a while, yes, you will, and you're not moving or traveling. I want to explore the world and find myself. I'm 38 years old. I want to find myself. Right? You know, you're going to be there for a while. That's a personal decision. And then usually if market conditions are right, it's worth it. This now gets to the rent versus buy decision. You provide me the 3 bits of information that I want to know, and it's a cash flow decision. Right? A house that you could afford is going to set you back $1,136 a month. All right. Right now, your rent is $444 a month. So you are going to have to pay another $900 a month to live in that house. And if it was just that, I would not. It isn't. You could take that $900 a month, throw it in a real estate investment trust in Australia if you want to be exposed to the Australian market. You still get the upside of not wasting rent. Because I can't imagine what your taxes are on that. Your interest is going to be more than your $444 you're paying. Well, I'm saying you just stay in you rent your room. All right. You take the $999 a month or $900 a month that you would have had to pay for a house. Instead of investing it in one house, you throw it into a diversified real estate investment trust. And then over 7 years, in theory, don't know what's going to happen to housing prices, but in theory, over time, that would go up, or it's at least going to pace with the Australian housing market. So as you're tossing that money into Australian property, right, you should build up a nest egg that has the equivalent purchasing power that when you are ready to go and pay for it, then you go buy a house in Australia, wherever you want. Right? I think that'd be a better way to do it. The only way I could see you buying a house now, this is why I asked you, do you have anyone you can rent a room to? Because what this would do, it would get you in a house. You have better living condition, of course, as opposed to just renting a room. You're now in a house and you got a buddy or two tossing you $500 a month rent each. All right. All of a sudden now you're just paying. Oh, I'm sorry. I did the math on this wrong. I thought it was 1136. Let me do the math on that. So you're saving $800 a month. Okay, maybe I didn't do the math too right. $800 a month you toss in. All right, so you charge each of these guys $500 a month for a room. Now you're generating $1,000. All you got to do is come up with the 136, but also maintenance and insurance and all that other crap. And so now you're on cash flow equivalent. Now they're helping you subsidize with your housing, and now you're not really losing any cash flow compared to what you were renting. And so you got some pretty cheap rent, man. That's a pretty good rent you got there, $444 a month. I know you don't like doing it, but why don't you start tossing some money into a real estate investment trust? Another thing you could do, if this would allow you to keep, let's say you throw money into a real estate investment trust, right? And housing starts to go down, which means the value of your real estate investment trust will go down. Well, it's still going down on par with real estate, but you're still accumulating money, tossing that money savings into it, right? And all of a sudden you're going to have this big pile of cash sitting there, and maybe enough that you would have a much lower mortgage payment. All of a sudden a really good house comes up as housing prices are going down. You say, oh, well, I got the 40,000 Australian sitting here. I'm going to go put a down payment. Housing prices go down. Let's say you find that house that was 200 now goes for 150. All right. So you could wait Wait for the housing market to go down. It looks like it's coming back up. All right, that's fine. Your real estate investment trust is going to go back up in theory. And you should be able to cash it in and get the same equivalent purchasing power. So but because you got such cheap rent, man, unless you got, and I said, do you know any reliable people? Maybe one or two reliable people. Most people are trash and unreliable, in my opinion. Well, then no. I don't know what rental laws are in your province or territory or state over there in Australia. But I mean, if they're favorable, you're like, hey, it's month to month and you pay me an FU. There's no BS. I mean, if you could find a reliable person. But that's the only way I would do it, because now you're on cash flow. And that's the final, should you buy a house? You're a young Zoomer. You're a young millennial. Should I buy a house? I don't have this much money. Rent versus buy decision. Look at cash flow. Right? What does it cost to rent? Usually in the United States, the rent is a little bit more expensive than the cost of a house, depending on the market you're in. All right. And there, having a roommate to subsidize would kind of make it an easy decision, because your cash flow makes sense. But there, man, that is some cheap rent you got. And you're a minimalist. You don't have a lot of stuff. But as a minimalist, you should have a positive cash flow to toss your money into various funds that will allow you to acquire a house at some point in time in the future. So that's what I would do. I don't want to know, what happens to housing market interest rates? What did Dave Ramsey say? Way too complex an analysis. What I got to pay for rent? What I got to pay for a mortgage? Can I rent out, subsidize it? Does it make sense? That's it. It's a cash flow decision. So there you go. All right, link below is Bachelor Pad Economics, the financial advice Bible for men. It goes through all the finance. Aaron, is it for the Americans? Is it for the Yanks or the septics, as the Australians like to call us? It is for, yes, but it is also for aside from the retirement plan part, which would obviously be the American retirement system. The rest of it does apply. Mayur again for 200 rupees. Indian from previous stream. Bike repair super chat. Starting engineer, internet week, and full-time job in 4 months. Can't buy a cheap bike to practice on. I'm tall and normal bikes give leg pain. Had to split. Oh, interesting. Man, you must be pretty tall if like even the average bike doesn't fit you. Yeah, I would. I had to do it, and I had to do it in Minnesota. I would bike to work in the snow. So you had to get snow tires, and I'd put my sock up over it sucked. It was horrible. Yeah, just get a pedal bike. That's what I would do, because you have to. There's no other way. You got to do it. Yeah, that's how you got to do it. But if your internship is 4 months away, can you work some kind of side hustles, some side gig, or you in school? You just don't have the time. You're at the ground level. You're at the grind. That's where everything, it doesn't get any worse than this. Every young man has to go, this is the worst part. I know it. I was there, man. This is like, you got to use your Schwinn to get to work. Remember there was one time it was just slushy. I got to work and just, I had to park the bike down there and like, ooh, you bike to work? Are you crazy? I'm like, are you going to pay me more so I can afford the parking? No, you're not. Shut up. That's Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, I hope all the old people that used to work there, I hope you all swim to Japan with cinder blocks around your belt in Minecraft. Any other super chats? No, that's it. Okay. Sounds good. All right, I'll see you guys later. Toodles.